Hi, this is your host, Quanisha Green, your Black Woman CEO coach and the founder of the Black Woman Rise movement, and welcome to the Black Woman CEO podcast, a podcast dedicated to helping Black women entrepreneurs to get paid to do what they love, own their time, and achieve financial freedom. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. Hi, this is your host, Quanisha Green, and I'm so excited to be back with our Black Woman CEO podcast. If you've been hanging out with me on the podcast in our community, you would know that our last episode was a little while ago. Right now, it's the beginning of the year of January 2018. The last podcast was October of 2017. And so I want to take this episode to share what happened in that time and really to use it as a profit and power lesson so that you don't make the same mistake on your CEO journey. But after the last episode, what happened was I broke down. I burnt out. As celebrities like to say, I had to cancel due to exhaustion. I actually wound up in the hospital, in the psychiatric ward for 5 days. And that hit me really hard. I think I've shared on the podcast that one of the things I struggle with is a mental health disorder. I have a mood disorder. But really deeper than that, and why I even have the mood disorder, is that I suffer from PTSD due to childhood trauma and neglect and some other things. Was growing up with a mother who had a severe drug problem, who didn't really tend to me, and a lot of other things that I can go into. And so throughout my youth, even into my young adulthood, I struggled with suicidal ideation. That means when you think about suicide. Right after I had my first child, like just a couple of months, I was actually almost attempted and was put in the hospital for a couple of days. The doctor thought it was a mixture of postpartum as well as my existing mood disorder. So I've had to battle with my mental health and just health overall. Because for me, depression really shows up in my body, right? Fatigue, pain, having a hard time getting out of bed, right? So it's not just a mental thing. And over the last couple of years, as I have done a lot of inner work, it's not so much, like I said, my thoughts or beliefs per se. It really is my body. But over 2017, I took another journey of healing where I started to work with a hypnotherapist. And she's actually one of the interviews that's going to be in our season 2 of the podcast with Rashida Gay of Mind Shift Life. And through the hypnotherapy, I actually got to do some child life regression, which means like you meet your child self and you heal. And you all are probably laughing at me like, Quanisha, that's really woo-woo. But I had to do that. I had to go back into some deep places of my mind to heal this younger Quanisha. And so that was at the beginning of 2017 while doing that work. Because one great thing about Rashida is that she's not just a hypnotherapist, she's actually a business coach and hypnotherapist, right? So she combines them beautifully. That's her unique selling proposition, right? Her unique genius. And within doing that work, within 6 weeks, I hit like 14K. And within 90 days of working with Rashida, I generated like 30K in my business. So this work was helping me to move. Every day I was doing mindset work. But then came July of the year, I got sciatica, my back went out, I was overworking, right? By this time I had hit 50K in revenue, I did all these intensives, I was doing high level coaching, I was doing trying to plan a live event, I actually did a live event, half day event with Kim Coles. And literally the day before I was supposed to go on for our half-day intensive, which did happen. People did well. They signed up for some more of our programs. My back went out. I literally wound up in the hospital with sciatica. Couldn't walk. My husband had to take me to the emergency room, right? So all these things were happening. Luckily, the next day after the event was my 5-day vacation, one of our first family vacations that we took, my husband and I and the kids. That wasn't like for an occasion, like a family reunion. And during that time, I started to feel my moods lessen. Right? So I kind of felt something coming on. And while I was on vacation, I got out of the habit of a lot of the protocols that Rashida had me on. And when I say protocols, I'm not talking about taking pills or anything, but I was doing a daily mindset practice. One thing, and this is something that my clients struggle with, so many of you listeners, right, you're my target audience, is that, particularly as Black women or women of color, just women in general, we are socialized to not think that we're good enough, right? And many of us, particularly as Black women, we have internalized stereotypes. We usually have to try twice as hard or work twice as hard as the next person. And my research that I've done, right, there's historical, familial, and cultural reasons as to why we shrink or why we don't think we're good enough or we think we need XYZ to be successful, right? So, and then particularly when you have additional things onto that, like trauma, growing up, I felt I wasn't loved. So I have this very deep core belief that I'm damaged, I'm unlovable. But those are some deep-seated things that I have going on. So one crucial thing, and it's rooted in cognitive behavioral principles, a psychological methodology or modality that's been proven for centuries to work in helping people to recover from mental health challenges like distorted thinking, because what we think impacts what we think and believe impacts how we feel, and that impacts how we act and behave, right? And then that ultimately impacts the results that we see in our life. And what are our results? That's our life, right? Our everyday experiences. So with cognitive behavioral perspectives like the hypnotherapy, you have to start reframing your thoughts, right? Even taking on healthier beliefs. And working with Rashida and even doing my own work prior to that, a lot of paradigm shifted for me, which caused me to feel differently, right? To have more joy and happiness and gratitude. And then also, ultimately, I acted differently and got different results. But the thing is that it takes a long time for those distorted thoughts to cement, right? At 5 years old, that's when I started to feel like nobody loves me. I remember my mother doing something, and I remember sitting here like, hey, she doesn't love me anymore. She doesn't hug me. She doesn't kiss me. She doesn't really interact with me. And so here I am now, 34, right? So you can say for, 29 years in different capacities, and then through different other experiences, I kept finding evidence to reinforce this, that I'm not lovable, I'm not good enough. Even though I've had success in spite of those feelings, you can say despite those feelings, right? I learned how to act regardless of how I was feeling. It's still a very core belief that shapes who I am, how I interact, how I think. And so the daily mindset work was so crucial because I was in a process of reprogramming my thoughts. But guess what happens when you stop doing that consistent work? It's the same way when I lost 30, 50 pounds and I stopped eating and stopped exercising. You gain the weight back, right? You gain the weight back. And I literally even gained weight during this time of depression because I was emotionally eating. I stopped eating healthy. I stopped, I stopped breastfeeding. So there was just so much going on. So anyway, fast forward to October. And you're going to find this funny. I would caused me to go to the hospital. So the day before my hospitalization, I was in the nail salon getting a regular manicure, pedicure, and I kept feeling this urge to cry. And I was like, okay, that's weird. I'm not going to cry here in the nail salon. And the next day, I had my eyebrow appointment. And the person that I usually have my eyebrows done with, she wasn't there. She's there on Tuesdays. I missed my Tuesday appointment because I was depressed. And so I tried the other person who didn't do my eyebrows well before, and she messed them up again, right? Because my eyebrows are pretty unique. You gotta have some skills to handle them. And I was such in a bad emotional state that when I saw my eyebrows, and my eyebrows, everybody has their thing. My thing are my eyebrows since I was young. I was so upset, I didn't like them, that I couldn't even articulate what was wrong and how she can fix them. And I literally sat in my car and cried. And I mean like that deep boo-hoo, snot running out your nose. And I had to look up on my phone what's called distress tolerance skills that I learned in a mental health skill class, just so that I could drive home safely. And I was about 10 minutes away from my house. So luckily my husband was home this day. I did text him and I was like, I'm crying, I'm on my way home. But by the time I got there, I knew I was in such bad shape that I was like, we need to call someone. I need to go somewhere, right? I need to go to the hospital. And I went to the local hospital, local mental health. They admitted me. And then I thought, I'll just be here for a day or two, 72-hour hold, the minimum. No, they kept me in there for 5 days, y'all. 5 days. But it was good. I got to rest. I slept for the first time in like a whole night. I didn't obviously have a phone. I didn't have my kids, right? So I journaled, I colored, I did puzzles. I felt like it was summer camp for adults, right? Even though, it's not fun being in a locked mental ward. And I was able to be put back on, a pharmaceutical regimen to help me, getting a regular therapist, because those are things that, I also let go by the wayside. When I'm well, I don't necessarily need them. But once again, I was in this very depressive state. So this was like emergency 911 mental health, right? And I had to go reset. And so when I came home from the hospital, I started to reflect on my business. I felt like a failure and a fraud because I was like, here I am working with my clients, helping them to maintain their daily mindset schedules and, other commitments that we make as entrepreneurs. And here I was totally like not engaged in my business correctly, kind of barely doing things, right? Getting the podcast out weekly, getting some content. Really not even engaging in marketing because I was kind of riding high for my 50K, right? The most I made in my business in 1 year. And imagine if I continued, I probably would have hit the 6-figure mark in a year. And so there was some self-sabotage there, right? Because I was like, wow, I haven't made that much as a nonprofit professional, like in a salary. And yes, y'all, I was underpaid. That's a whole nother story. So there was probably some self-sabotage there, but then I crashed. So I was mad at that. I felt I hadn't reached my potential. I felt someone who wasn't walking their talk, and I seriously considered shutting down the business. And then I also thought, I said, do I have the capacity to run my business? Because this wasn't the first time I broke down. Even in my first year of business, coming off of being in grad school full-time for 2 years, did my master's in social work program. I broke down during that time a couple of times. Coming out, leaving graduate school, I was able to work for myself full-time. But about 4 or 5 months in, once again, working crazy because I piloted this program. I was working about 45 hours a week because I overbooked myself in my private practice. I broke down. I had to take a 30-day hiatus and I actually went to a residential treatment center for mental health, right? And so I was like, how the heck did I get here again? Once again, having to be away from my family, locked away somewhere restricted due to my mental health. And I was just thinking like, maybe entrepreneurship is not for me. Maybe I need like a low stress, sitting at somebody's front desk as a security guard, not utilizing any of all this education and money I've invested in myself because I was like, maybe my brain can't handle it. I had to sit and really think about that. And I sat with it for a couple of days once I was home. Could I, once again, have the capability to run a business while simultaneously tending to my wellness? Could I do it? Right? Could I do it? And then I started to read some testimonials from my clients, right? I informally text some of them before. I asked them, hey, what have been some of your results? This is what I discovered, that I do have a unique place in the business world, right? And of course, we all do, right? Are unique. That's why people buy from us. This is what she wrote. I'll just read it to you. She said, authenticity. This has become a buzzword lately, and few people actually live up to this. You, however, are truly authentic. Your interactions with others through one-on-one conversations, your social media posts, and how you communicate about your business tells an honest picture of what it means to be a successful Black woman who is a leader, entrepreneur, mom, wife, sister. I was attracted to your ability to clearly capture my personal struggles in business. Being the smart perfectionist who was struggling with building an actual business, you spoke plainly and direct to my struggles, especially to my shame and fear around business. I also did not feel like I was being forced into working with you. You don't present as if you have it all together, quote, or perfect, not in a negative way, which makes me feel like I can attain some level of success as you. Knowing that I will make mistakes, that it won't look perfect, but that it will take effort, consistency, and persistence. Because you are transparent in your life and business, it is easy to watch what you are doing to grow your business. Your actions provide a great context. A how-to that complements your one-on-one coaching and Profit School, which is our mastermind program, very well. I would say I learned more by watching you And that could be because of my personal learning style. You care about those who you work with. You care about our successes, both personal and professional. You understand where we are coming from, and you are not afraid to call us out on our excuses/BS. And that was written by one of my clients who's in my mastermind program, and she does private coaching with me. She has a doctorate, right? She has a PhD. She's a very intelligent sister. But one thing I noticed, as you can see, even based on her testimonial, is that my trials in leadership are key factors in my business. Like I said, I built this movement while managing an illness, the challenges of motherhood, and the turbulence of entrepreneurship. And to make your path sweet and easy, I documented the journey, right? I've shared the personal lessons. And particularly, I've designed my program so that you could avoid not just the professional mistakes that I've made, but the personal mistakes, right? And these challenges that I go through. And so although I felt like a failure and a fraud, like I said, I didn't live in alignment with what I profess, I did understand that those were reasons not to shut down, right? Because like me, your life isn't perfect, right? You falter despite progressing great knowledge and expertise on what you do. And surprisingly, there is wealth in all this, right? There is wealth. And this is why some of us do doubt ourselves, right? You may be thinking right now that you should be giving up on your journey or maybe giving up on your business. Perhaps you have doubts or you're doubting yourself because the cash flow is slow. Perhaps you feel inauthentic because you aren't following your own advice or system, or your life, business, health, parenting, whatever you teach isn't what it used to be. Or maybe you feel like a failure because you aren't where you should be right now. But here's the truth. You don't have to stop doing business as you manage any of this. You may even grow your business because of it. So that is what was going on with me. Why our last podcast episode was in October. And as I took the time to heal, to get into a routine, I don't want to say let some things go. I just kind of let the business sit and rest. Unfortunately, as I was ramping back up, like I redid our free offer, which is our 5-step Get Known series. I'll put the link to that because it's at blackwomanrise.com. On December 14th, it was a Thursday, I got the call in the beginning of the day that my best friend of 15 years, we met our freshman year in college, she died suddenly. It was just a shock. It was a real shock. And that was 2 or 3 days before I was even going to do our Get Known masterclass. I just had to cancel because it was hard. It was really hard. And like I said, she died unexpectedly. I took that time in December to grieve, right? To just say, hey, shutting down. And luckily, I was so thankful for my kids because I didn't want to celebrate Christmas. I also got the flu, but my kids were so persistent about this tree. I have a 5-year-old. So not the baby, but the 5-year-old. And he reminded me about, some of my fondest memories in my youth was putting up the Christmas tree with my grandmother and my cousin. And I realized he's at the age where he'll start to remember these things. So he slowly helped me to get out of bed. And get going. And about a couple of days before the new year, I actually was once again laying in bed crying. Some of it was grief. Some of it was just me still feeling exhausted. The grief kind of triggered some of my emotional things and wondering, many of us at the end of the year start to wonder about the new year. And I was like, can I do this? Can I really do this business? Can I keep going? Is this the right thing to do? As I was sitting there, I remembered a book by Dale Carnegie called Stop Worrying and Start Living. And so I started to read that book, and it reminded me I was so disconnected from my work. I felt disconnected from my family. And Dale Carnegie in the book, and I'll put the link also in the show notes, Stop Worrying and Start Living, he talked about us once again connecting with something that was larger than ourselves. And I had to go back and think about this whole Black Women Rise movement, this Black Women CEO work, right? Why did I even start on this path? One, I heard it in prayer to do it as I changed my whole master's thesis to focus on Black women and our issues. But then I was like, wait, my gift is not about me, right? And that's one thing I would encourage you to take on. Sometimes when we're in the middle of things, and it's not saying we shouldn't tend to ourselves. Like we should definitely grieve if something, happens in our life. If you're dealing with a health issue, go take care of it, right? Rest. But when you're ready to get on, right, there's at some point when you're like, okay, I got to get up. And if you find yourself having a hard time to get up, this is when we need help. And although I was getting help, it still didn't feel like it was enough. But I had to shift my thinking. I had to alter my gaze from thinking about myself and maybe the horrible things that have happened to me to shift to think about other people. One of the recommendations he says is to every day think of someone else. And that someone else right now has been my business or it's been my family. I'm like, oh, my kids need breakfast. Let me get up. And then I also thought about what brings me joy. What brings me joy? So just a couple of days before this recording on January 4th, I was able to sit down and close the door on 2017. And how did I do that? I examined and let go of baggage. I thought about the resentments that I was holding on to. I thought about lingering shame, lingering guilt, right? Because shame is rooted in the I'm bad. Guilt is I did something bad. So I examined all of those things, figured out what did I learn from them? How did those situations serve me? Because often when we keep something in our life, it's serving us in some way. Sometimes it's to invalidate like those distorted thoughts that we have about ourselves. And why it's time to let those things go. And so this year, my New Year's message that I write every year wasn't, a how-to or inspo message around how to get and stay in action. It was the lessons that I learned and what I was deciding to do to strut into 2018 with my head held high. And I want to end the podcast with sharing those insights with you. 5 things I plan to do going forward into 2018 and that I'm planning to make some concrete goals around. This is what I found after letting go of the resentment, shame, and guilt. That one, what I plan to do is only focus on what I love. I love Facebook and LinkedIn for community and social media engagement. And I'm currently checking out Medium. I love to color and meditate, work on puzzles and journal for relaxation. I love all things purple, maroon, pink, and gold. So you'll likely see me rocking those colors often with a few browns right here and there as neutrals. I love a good movie, right? A book and a relaxing Netflix TV binge. Who can relate to that? Netflix and chill with myself. So I'm going to organize these indulgences versus doing them haphazardly, right? Or out of depression. I love a good walk and a lounge in the park and visits to the beach. And so I plan to do all the above, but also do it in community, right? With my family and friends. The second thing that I plan to do this year is write to serve. I love writing. Each day I will sit down, and I have been able to do this over the last week. I'll sit down and write a message to you by asking myself, what does my soulmate client need to hear today? Right? So that's that way I can focus on and do Dale Carnegie's rule. And this is what I was doing earlier in 2017 to connect with folks and build this community. I just want to know what my soulmate client needs to hear today so that I can relay those messages of inspiration and encouragement, all those things that my brand stands for. The third thing I plan to do is to create systems for home and business life. I have a confession. I don't care much for routines. Oh my God, they bore me. But I had to ask myself a common question that I pose to my clients, and this is a question you can ask yourself, is how is that working out for you? So me not liking routines and not sticking to one in many areas of my life, I had to ask, how is that working out for you, Quanisha? And guess what? It's not, and it wasn't. One of the reasons why I break down and I burn out is from a lack of a self-care routine around sleep, eating, and health. My house is constantly in chaos because I don't stick to a regular tidying schedule. I'll get into this like marathon cleaning and then it might not happen for a week, or I'm just using Clorox wipes everywhere. My relationships with loved ones weren't and aren't being nurtured because I'm always putting out fires, right? And then I exhaust myself. And so the introvert in me then doesn't have the energy to engage with people because then I'm like, oh, I just need to go lay down somewhere. And so despite knowing better, I roller coaster through my life and business like I'm a college student pulling an all-nighter. I do these intense like make it happen sprints, like even in my business or other areas of life, and then I crash. And that obviously is not working out for me. That's what led to the hospitalization. And honestly, it's not working out for anyone else in my life, right? So when I'm chaotic or I'm running around like a chicken with his head cut off, it impacts my kids. My husband, it impacts you, right? This is your podcast after couple of months, right? So it impacts all those who I touch. So I'm leaning on these wise words that I got from Dr. Monica Ongando, who was our kickoff podcast interview. So you can go back to the episode and listen to Dr. Monica's interview. This is one thing she gave me when I was coaching with her and doing her programs. She said, there's freedom in systems. There's freedom in systems. So I have to shift, and I'm working on shifting even my mindset that routines are restrictive or jail sentences, right? But there's freedom in systems. And so freedom is actually one of my top values, one of my personal top values. So this is how I can even honor that and have more freedom show up in my life, is by implementing systems. Number 4, I'm going to follow through on promises and create a system around tracking them. Because of a lack of systems and the consequences of that, some things get delayed, right? And then I forget to come back to them. So I'm making this a priority so that I may honor myself and my relationships, right? The people who I might be making promises to. And then the very last thing is I plan to believe in my worth. I'm worthy simply because I'm a child of God. I really believe that. And due to some, like I said, the traumatic and these insidious incidents, I've formed those deep-seated core beliefs, and the 3 ones are that I'm not good enough, I'm unlovable, I'm damaged and flawed, and I know those are distorted perceptions, and I have a lifetime of evidence to prove that they're false. And that's actually one of the things I teach people when you're reframing your mind, is to contest your limiting beliefs. So like I said, it took 33 years for these beliefs to cement, or rather during my formative years, so 20-something years, and to counter that, I am engaging in my daily work, right? My daily mindset work that's required to rewire my brain and maintain a healthy sense of self. So this year and beyond, I'm operating from this place that I'm okay. I'm okay. Like I tell my clients, you are okay, sis. There's nothing to fix, right? There's nothing for me to fix. And there's simply room for me to grow, thrive, and flourish. So with that, I'm letting go and investing in fixing me, because I'm truly good, y'all. I'm good. Those are the intentions that I will break down into measurable goals and targets for 2018. As you know, we got to make our goals SMART, right? Specific, measurable, actionable, realistic, and timely. And I may be doing another podcast on goal setting, because I actually don't like the word goal setting. I like targeting, so we can talk about that later. But I'm grateful really for this opportunity. One, to share my intentions, to share my life with you in different ways, to share the people who I love and hold near and dear, even in the business space, right? Many of the women who have been on the podcast as interviews, who are going to come on, and we have some awesome interviews for our second season. You know, one of the selfish reasons that I started this podcast is that I wanted to be nosy and ask particularly mompreneurs, or, you know, people who are mothers and established in their business. You know, they've hit those multiple 5 figures, multiple 6 figures, some million marks, and ask them, like, how do you do it? Because as I just said, you know, my personal life is kind of crazy, even though I'm getting results and I make things happen. So that's why I ask those questions, like, what does your self-care look like? What does your day look like? How do you handle failures, right? These are all these questions that we ask, and I think that's what makes our podcast unique, because we're not just asking people about the surface level things. I'm asking about the inner thing, their self-perception. How are they managing? What are their thoughts, right? Those deeper levels that many of us want to know how to make this work. How do they balance all their commitments? Some people are taking care of older parents, or taking care of kids, or, you know, managing some other life commitments. It's great to hear these stories. So you can go to blackwomenrise.com, and I'll make sure that's in the show notes, so that you can get updates on our programs, right? Because we do programs in community. I rarely do a course where I'm not like coaching in it, because that's my unique genius. I coach and I also teach strategy, but the coaching helps you to do the inner work so that you can do the outer work. So if you've been stuck, we need to look at your thoughts, your beliefs, your actions, and drill back to see what has been shaping that and how can we undo it. And then we have our complimentary community in the Facebook group, the Black Women CEO Circle, so that I can support you outside of our programs. Yeah, so there's just a lot of stuff going on. But if you're not on the email list, you won't always get notifications, right? So come into our inner circle of the Black Women Rise. As you listen to the podcast, definitely is another place for me to share insights, share all the assets that we have in this community. Join the community and you get a free gift. I created a new series for you called 5 Steps to Get Known for Your Expertise. When I surveyed the community, the majority of the people said they wanted to get known. They didn't know how to claim their expertise, get known. So I take you through 5 steps. One is helping you get clarity on your vision. Some of the work I just told you I did. I also go over how you can get clarity on your soulmate client. Who is it that you want to work with? And it doesn't have to be a person, it could be organizations. The third thing is helping you to even understand what you would offer. Some of you haven't really put together a signature process and offer that you can walk someone through. If you are generating revenue, you may be trading dollars for hours, and you really haven't packaged up your genius in a way and position it as a high value offer. So that's lesson 3. Then on day 4, I actually walk you through a process to claim your expertise, right? So that you can start to articulate it and own it and see yourself as an expert. That is a major struggle with many women, and then even Black women, that we don't claim expert status. We don't claim CEO status. And then on day 5, I actually show you how you can get out there and start right now, starting to get known for your expertise. Okay, so this is that 5-step series. When you join blackwomenrise.com, if you're already in the community, you can also go to blackwomenrise.com, just put your email address in again, and it'll start the series fresh for you. Okay, so I'm looking forward to being in community, looking forward to connecting with you, but definitely come into Black Women Rise so that I get to put a face to the name or to the listener. You can identify yourself. Please share the link in the podcast with a friend so that you can help another sister rise. This is Quanisha Green, your host, signing off, and I will talk with you soon. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. And for more Black Women CEO wisdom and expert tips, please visit blackwomanceo.com. So this is your host, Quanisha Green, signing off. Until next time, remember, power is the ability to create your reality.